We have done a massive diagnostic on the financial regulatory reform bill. And of course, it doesn't stop toxic derivatives. It doesn't stop creating companies that are too big to fail. And of course, it is going to be used in the same political arena as we look at something with BP. It is selective enforcement, and their friends won't have to worry about any real regulatory reform. Why do people keep buying this? This is actually bad for the economy, and I'm not saying that from a political point of view. It is simply, you add up the X's and the O's. This does absolutely nothing to stop what brought us to this point here with the subprime meltdown and these toxic derivatives. Again, more reform in the wrong direction, not addressing the actual problem, and again being selectively enforced with the political realm.
And totally missing the function or the job of government. Paternalistic in its view, you're going to always see those who are in elected office think that they know better than everyone else, and they become the parent of the society, and that's exactly how government is behaving at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level. These two classes of citizens, which our founders fought vehemently against and laid out a plan for us so that that didn't happen here in these United States. We would have civilian legislators, and we would not have a dual-class society, and yet we have the royal political class that is immune from the same laws and regulations that everybody else has to live under, and they're smarter than we are, and they have to tell us how to live. And we continue to see that over and over, very evident in all of the bills that are passed, that that's the perspective from which those folks govern. And there are a few of us who are standing up and saying, that's not my job. That's not your job as an elected official to make those sorts of decisions. And I'm going to be bold enough. I think I've told this story before. One of the probably most interesting exchanges that I had during the campaign was a lady asked me how come I chose to homeschool my children, and I said, it's none of your business.
Yeah.
And her eyes kind of got real big, and initially people standing around in that small circle, you could see the shock, and then the smile started to come. Hey, she's right. That isn't any of our business. Those were her kids to raise. She has every right to educate them however she chooses. It's not the governor's job to be questioning you as a parent, and it's not your right to be questioning some other parent as to how they're educating their children, and yet we just don't see enough of that.
Yeah. Well, and that answer and that antidote is the perfect reason why we should all be really somewhat ashamed of ourselves that we didn't propel you into the governor's job, because again, right, this isn't the job of government. The job of government is to save the Gulf right now, potentially. The job of government is to secure our borders. There are jobs for government, but our education and this financial regulatory reform, these are not jobs for government. And until these companies really get punished, I don't think that we're ever going to see an end to any of this, because we look on the horizon and we see carbon trading toxic derivatives. We see a subprime 2 coming. The smaller non-Federal Reserve banks are being punished while the Federal Reserve, again, sits as a puppet master, and then most people believe that they are the government. Of course, this was all played out in this crazy movie on CNBC, The Fall of the House of the Lehman Brothers, where you saw the Federal Reserve acting as the role of government and lording over all these companies and deciding who gets to live and who gets to die. That is not the free market economy that was bestowed upon us by our founding fathers.
Well, and therein lies the problem. You made reference to until these companies pay for their destructive behavior, but we've set up government regulations that dictate to them what they'll do, and then they use that as a excuse for their behavior. We did what the government said we had to do, therefore we don't have any liability for this. If the market were driving behavior, we wouldn't have those problems.
Yeah.
But when government says this is all you have to do to meet the guidelines and therefore not have any liability, as long as you can check that box, then you're free and clear. Beyond that point, none of us would get away with that in the private sector.
Well, in a worst-case scenario, this is for my listeners, because rhetorically to you, I know you know that this is a reality here, is that if we let Lehman Brothers fail and we let AIG fail, certainly we might have to come in and rescue some stockholders, rescue some smaller banks. I mean, we would have been then, at that time at least, bailing out the right people and not rewarding criminal behavior. But again, we're the crazy ones, right, Deborah? This is it's such common sense sometimes that it's shocking.
Agreed.
I want to ask you one more question about money, and this has to do with the health care bill that was recently shoved down our throats. We have found today, this is exactly what I told my listeners would happen, there would be a complete and total financial probe of every single man, woman, and child in this country to see what kind of help you might need from the government. They would make sure to know where all your money is, where all your income comes from, what you're paying, what you're getting in, what you're paying out, in order to figure out what bracket you might fit in. So again, they can help you. And as you know, there's no opt-out. The IRS is planning on hiring 5 or 10,000, I've heard up to 30,000 new workers to make all this happen. Now today, this came out embedded into the financial perestroika, financial reform bill, in section 9006. It begins talking about how gold coins will be monitored, how gold coins must be declared, how before you can get your health care, you've got to, again, report to the Internal Revenue every move you've made regarding your gold coins. Now, if you bought a gold coin and you were smart 10 years ago for, say, $250, and now it might be worth up to $1,000, they want their cut. This is unbelievable. What does that have to do with health care?
Has to do with nationalizing our society, and government taking over everything. And we knew that. We saw that coming.
You think they're trying to put the private gold sellers and gold brokers out of business? This isn't something that they like. That is Americans rescuing themselves, doing something that makes sense, like investing in gold.
I'm not sure how important it is to think about what someone might be thinking as much as it is to look at the end result of what they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know that trying to understand the thought patterns or the intent of these individuals who are voting yes for those sorts of bills, the end result of them is that we are moving from a free market constitutional republic to a totalitarian state. And it doesn't matter whether your intent is good or not. The end result is you are marching us headlong to a totalitarian state, and we're doing double time to get there. That's what it's important, I think, for people to see.
Sure.
That these policies are moving us in a very direct, systematic march towards a totalitarian state where there is no private property, there is no ownership of the product of your labor. You will work for the government, and you will be allotted what the government deems you ought to have. There are 3 children in your family, you get a 2-bedroom house, and you get X number of square feet, and you're going to move and live over here, and you're going to be paid this, and this is where you're going to get your health care from, and these are the kind of automobiles that are going to be available, and here's what you're going to drive. That's where we're headed. And if you can't see that, you've got very thick scales over your eyes.
Some would say that's where we're at. Maybe anticipating a little less and realizing a little more the situation that we're currently in. Well, Section 9006 in the Obama health care bill certainly shows that special interests did really get things embedded into the bill that have absolutely nothing to do with health care. And that was the warning we sounded. And freedom really is the answer. It doesn't matter what the question is, and that's what we love about you, Deborah. The other thing we love about you is you have moved forward from your fantastic challenge to status quo government in Texas and created a great organization called We Texans. Tell us briefly about that, and you've got a big event coming up here this Saturday that we want to tell our listeners about.
We do. We are really continuing to develop there and mature that voice that was initiated during the campaign. 275,000 people around Texas supported that effort, and we knew that if we were going to continue to advance freedom, that's a fight that requires eternal vigilance. We have some political capital here that we didn't have a year and a half ago. What tactics do we use today? And I created We Texans as a not-for-profit here in the state, particularly to lobby on the issues of private property, state sovereignty, looking for moving us towards that constitutional republic that our founders intended.